Hello, beautiful people. This is a yin-yang practice in celebration of the equinox season. So it will contain elements of both yin, the more slower, more passive, more relaxed types of poses that we hold for longer periods of time, and yang poses that will require a little bit more stability, a little bit more muscle toning in those poses. So the practice starts out pretty slowly with a little bit of a yin attitude. Then it ramps up to yang exercises. We'll do a few sun salutations and warrior flows, and then it'll settle back down into a yin practice. And like I mentioned earlier, the theme for practice will be the equinox season. This is being filmed in the northern hemisphere, so this is being filmed during the spring equinox. So it's a celebration, and it's an honoring and a noticing of spring out in the world, maybe within ourselves. And so some useful props will be padding, like pillows and blankets. If you have a yoga block might also be useful. This practice will start with finding our inner ground and finding some roots. So I'm going to suggest starting off in what's known as Hero's Pose. Now, Hero's Pose is actually sitting back on your heels, kind of sitting in between your heels, although you can sit on your heels if that works for you. This way to sit is not accessible for all of us. So if you have a block, as I mentioned, you can take a block, put it on whatever height you need it, and you can sit on the block if that makes it accessible way to sit. If you're using a block or two blocks and everything is inaccessible and painful, find another comfortable seat. Maybe sitting cross-legged works, or you can maybe even sit in a chair for the beginning of this practice here, although we will start to get moving here shortly here. So take some time here to just notice. Like I said, the theme for this class is spring. So we're basically honoring, celebrating, and noticing spring. And that's the focus, that's the intention that I have for this practice. So if it's spring where you're at, or if you're just randomly watching this video and it's some other season, maybe notice what season it is outside. If you're in the southern hemisphere and you're watching this during the equinox, the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, well, then it's the autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere. So if you've been sitting here for a while, now take notice of your own inner being. See if this is a comfortable seat. See if something needs to change. And just notice your breath. So noticing the seasons, noticing the cycling of the seasons is exactly that, a cycle, a circle. And we have all kinds of cycles going on. We have a cycle going on within us. Each heartbeat that goes on is a cycle. Each breath we take, inhales and exhales, is a cycle here. So notice that. Maybe soften the thoughts in your brain, maybe soften your face. You can maybe soften the space in between your eyes and the muscles around your eye socket. Begin to soften up your jaw and the inside of your mouth here. And maybe a few more breaths here. Just a couple more breaths, just to continue to get centered. And then we'll begin to move here. This little vinyasa sequence with the arms, this is called Circle of Life, although it's kind of a full body practice here. So bring your hands together in front of heart center. And then on an inhale, extend your hands out and up, all the way up towards the ceiling, and then really reach up with your arms and your torso. Next, exhale and sweep your arms down and behind you. And if you can, clasp your hands behind you. If you can't clasp your hands, that's fine. Just kind of bring your arms as close together as you can. If you can have your arms clasped, roll your shoulders back, extend your arms behind you. Lift your sternum up towards the ceiling, make a slight back bend here. And then exhale, bring your hands all the way around. Bring your spine back to neutral. Bring your hands at heart center here. So we'll do this 3 more times, this little circle of life flow. So arms go up towards space, towards the sky on an inhale. Exhale, arms sweep behind you, interlace your fingers. Inhale, a mini back bend as you extend your arms down and back, and then exhale, hands sweep around in front, back to heart center. So 2 more times. Inhale, arms reach up towards the sky. Exhale, arms sweep back behind you. Inhale, mini back bend here. Exhale, hands come sweeping to heart center. And then 1 more cycle here. Inhale, arms reach towards the sky. Exhale, arms sweep behind you. Inhale, a mini back bend as the front of the torso expands, and exhale. Bring the hands back around and back at heart center. Maybe just stay here for 1 or 2 breaths here. And then from here, we're moving into a yin posture known as half butterfly pose. So we're starting the sequence off with kind of a yin attitude. We'll ramp up to a yang attitude, and then we'll switch back down to a yin attitude here. So from whatever seat you've taken, come to sit with legs out in front. And if you have a lot of tightness in your back body and your back legs, maybe sit up on a little bit of height. I'll sit up on a blanket here. This is a yin posture that we'll just hold for a couple of minutes. This is called half butterfly. Take your right leg and lower your right leg out to the right side. By the way, I'm shadowing you, so I'm actually doing the opposite of what I'm saying, just so it's maybe easier to visually follow along here. Bring the right heel in as far as it goes until it stops. If this right knee is achy, put some padding on it, like underneath it, like a block or a pillow. Left leg is straight, or it can be slightly bent if that helps to take strain out of that left leg. You can move the left leg over to the left a little bit. This is the beginnings of half butterfly. So this is where we're going to stay for a couple of minutes. You can stay here, or if you wish, grow your spine nice and neutral. Look over this left leg and then hinge forward over the left leg and then soften the muscles in your torso. Let your spine just round, relax, and release here. And again, if you don't like your torso hanging in midair, you can always get some props here. And then we'll just try to reside here for a couple of minutes here. So it's time. It's the time that we spend in the posture, in these yin postures, that does some work here. Give yourself permission to come out of the posture if it gets too traumatic or injurious or painful. Otherwise, just try to reside here, soften, settle, let your muscles relax here. Take a yin attitude. So for these longer yin postures, the idea is we're relaxing muscle fiber. We're holding for time. So we're trying to find an appropriate edge. We become still, and then we reside in the posture. We wait. We use time to help soak into the stiffer tissues of the body, whereas the muscles are the more pliant tissues here. So we'll just try to stay here for another minute or so. This is a good time in this moment of stillness to reflect upon the equinox season. So we mainly know the equinox as the first day of spring or the first day of fall. And we know those days to be the days of equal day and equal night. The day is 24 hours long. On the equinoxes, there's 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of darkness, pretty much all over the entire planet Earth. No matter where you are on any equinox, you're going to experience that that equalness, that balance of light and darkness, and that's kind of the essence of how we understand the equinox on a day-to-day basis. Although in our modern urban culture, we kind of lose track of the days and nights changing lengths of time because we have electricity. We can stay up late at night. We're not so dependent on it anymore. But that's what's happening. That's what's going on the first day of spring. Is the days and nights are equal, and we're moving into a season now where the daylight hours are longer than the night hours here. We're moving out of winter. We can move out of this posture. So moving out of a yin posture does feel like we're moving out of winter. So we slowly bring ourselves up. We feel a little bit stiff. So we can be stiff, slow, and deliberate when we come out of a yin posture. Bring that right knee up, extend that right leg forward, and then maybe point and flex and wiggle the legs around just to work out the kinks, but we'll get started with the other side. So now bend the left knee, lower the left knee out to the left. Bring the left heel in as far as it goes until it doesn't go anymore. And it might be different for each one of us where that is. You can leave the right leg where it is. You can move the right leg out a few inches. The right knee can be straight. The right knee can be slightly bent. Turn and face the right leg. Grow up tall through your torso and then hinge if you wish. Now, if you decide that hinging and the forward folding is not working for you, just maintain the shape of the legs and the hips. Otherwise, hinge and fold forward any amount over the other right leg, and the right leg, and we'll stay here now for a couple of minutes here. So again, at least initially, check in with your breath. Check in with all the physical sensations that are talking to you at the moment. And they might not be in obvious places. Like we live in kind of a superficial world, so we get really caught up in what our external superficial limbs are doing, what feet and hands and head are doing. But these postures are meant to get deep into the center of our being, the low back and the hips, and that's where we maybe feel stuck here. And the idea is to not feel stuck like cold, dark winter, but to start to redefine that stiffness as, okay, this is my balance point. This is my point of equalness at the moment. And it's unique to me, and it'll be different for someone else, and it'll be different for me on different days here. So we've been here for about a minute. We'll try to stay for another minute if that feels appropriate. Again, you can always decide to come out if you've had a bit of enough here. Otherwise, if you feel like you've got muscles engaged, to freeze yourself in place, maybe experiment with softening those muscles and allowing yourself to ooze a little bit farther into the posture. I'm talking strictly about a yin kind of attitude. After this, we're going to start moving into a more yang attitude here. But we have 4 or 5 more breaths to maybe just allow ourselves to ooze and to soften and to be still, and to maybe think about what to us represents spring, what to us represents this season of balanced day and night here. Maybe one more breath, and then when you're ready to come out, if you're doing the forward fold, you can use your hands on the floor and use the muscles in your arms to slowly draw your torso up straight, and then slowly bring that left leg out and start making little motions, just kind of organic motions here to work out the kinks. At some point, we'll move into a tabletop position here. So we're transitioning. We're transitioning from a yin kind of winter experience to a yang summer experience, which is the transition of spring. So we're moving into the yang portion of the practice now. So come on to hands and knees, come into table pose. From here we're moving into downward facing dog. So maybe move your hands forward slightly in front of your shoulder, maybe a little bit wider than you normally have them. Tuck your toes under, feet are about hip width apart. And root through your hands, root through your toes or your feet. And then see if you can lift your hips up towards the ceiling. Knees can be soft and bent. Eventually, maybe they straighten. Maybe you have to rearrange hands and feet. So this is a yang posture. Muscles are toning in your legs and in your arms and in your torso, trying to maintain a fairly neutral spine here. So if you have to rearrange things to do that, go ahead. And if this is causing pain for you, then just put your knees back down on the ground. Do this version of kind of called half dog, half downward facing dog, or even puppy pose here. And you can take your dog for a walk if you're in downward facing dog, and this feels pretty good. So you can push one heel towards the ground, bend the opposite knee, and then just cycle back and forth gently. And then maybe bring your dog back down to stillness. Look up between your hands. And now we're coming into a standing forward fold. So you can either hop, jump, or simply walk your feet up towards the front, in between your hands. And then feet are comfortable hip width apart. And then lower your torso, let it just kind of hang and droop here for a moment. Legs can be straight, knees can be bent, feet can be close together or as wide apart as you need them. So you can do little bits of adjustment here, and just notice how this forward fold is feeling. You can maybe wiggle around or stay in stillness or clasp opposite elbows. Maybe a couple more breaths here. And then we'll slowly begin to roll up to standing. So from here, knees can be as deeply bent as they need to be. Maybe you have to really bend them deeply. And then with a nice rounded spine, begin to roll up. Start the roll up at your hips. So start rolling your spine up from the sacrum, from the lumbar, and then begin to roll up through your upper spine, through your neck, finally through your head until you're standing here, standing in mountain pose. So mountain pose is actually a yang posture. So find your mountain, visualize your favorite mountain, become that mountain, create the rootedness in your feet, a slight toning through your legs to create that stability in mountain pose. Maybe roll your shoulders up and back, maybe chin is slightly tucked, crown of your head is moving up towards the ceiling. You're trying to create a nice neutral spine here. Arms are along your side, palms can face in or they can face forward. I like mine to face forward because they help me to roll my shoulders back, open up my collarbone and the front of my torso. And then just feel like the rest of your body is like toning and open, but your face is soft. So the peak of your mountain is very airy, very windy, very, very peaceful here. So maybe one more breath in mountain pose here. And then, as I promised, we'll move into some sun salutations, which are a very traditional activity to do around the solstices and the equinox in yoga communities to signify this event between the earth and the sun in Earth's orbit around the sun. And the event is where the tilt of the Earth's axis is with respect to the sun. So if you're using a mat, stand up near the front of your mat. We'll start off with some half sun salutations. So from mountain pose, inhale and sweep your arms up overhead, extend your arms long here. And then exhale, arms sweep out wide, swan dive forward. Knees can be straight or they can be bent. Nice neutral spine as you dive down here. And then release your torso, let it round, come into a forward fold here. Then bring your hands to your shins. And then extend your spine long. Come up halfway into what's a half forward fold. So this takes some core and muscle engagement to do this. And then go ahead and
fold forward again into a forward fold. Now we'll reverse swan dive. So arms come out wide, extend your spine long here, and then slowly bring yourself up. Again, knees can be as bent as they need to be until finally arms come up overhead into an upward salute, and then bring your hands down in front of heart center. So that's one cycle of a half sun salutation. We'll do 3 more cycles here at a little bit faster pace. So inhale, arms come up overhead, upward salute, grow long here. Exhale and swan dive forward into a forward fold. And then inhale, halfway lift, lengthen your torso. Exhale, fold. And then inhale, arms come up overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. And then inhale, arms up, grow long. Exhale and fold forward. Inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, fold. And then inhale, bring your arms all the way up. And back down into prayer position. One more cycle. Inhale, arms come up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale to a halfway lift. Exhale, fold. And then inhale, reverse swan dive. Arms come up and overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. And a resting breath here. So now we'll segue into full sun salutation A's, and we'll do a couple of cycles of them here. So we're adding a few more poses into the sequence of these vinyasa sequences of sun salutation. So from mountain pose, sweep your arms up overhead. Full sun salutation A now. Exhale and swan dive forward. Inhale up into a halfway lift, extend your spine, grow long. Exhale, fold, bend your knees and plant your hands on the ground. Root through your hands and then step one foot towards the back of the mat. Step the other foot towards the back of the mat. You're momentarily in a plank position. This is a very core engaging pose, but bring your knees to the ground and lower your chin and your chest until you're all the way onto the floor. Legs extended out behind you, untuck your feet here. You can root your hands into the ground and just using the muscles in your torso, reach up into a baby cobra pose, or maybe press your hands into the ground and come up into a full cobra pose, a prone back bend here. And then slowly lower yourself back down to the ground. Tuck your toes under. And then root through your hands, press your hands and your arms, your torso up and back, almost into a child's pose, but we're moving into downward facing dog. Now, if you don't like downward facing dog, you can just stay in child's pose for a moment. Hands rooted, feet rooted. Lift your hips up, bring yourself into your downward facing dog here. And a couple of breaths here. So if you're in child's pose, just a couple of breaths in child's pose here. But if you are in child's pose, do lift yourself up into downward facing dog, and then everyone look between your hands and bring your feet forward. So if you like to hop your feet forward, you can hop them forward. If you like to step them forward, you can step them forward, or just walk them forward. Back into a forward fold. And then hands to shins, come up halfway, half forward fold. Exhale, forward fold, and then the reverse swan dive. Bring yourself up to an upward salute. And then exhale, hands to heart center. So another round of that, a little bit faster here. Inhale, arms come up overhead. Exhale, swan dive forward. Inhale, halfway lift, lengthen out through the torso. Exhale, fold, bend your knees, plant your hands, step your feet back into a plank position, and then lower your knees, lower your chest and your chin. Come all the way down onto your torso, onto your belly, and then inhale up into a baby cobra or a full cobra pose here. And then bring yourself back in either a child's pose for a breath or two, or full downward facing dog. And again, notice the rootedness of your hands and your feet. Notice the extension that you're making through your legs and through your arms. And the neutral, nice Nice stable neutral spine here. If you're not already there, lift yourself up into downward facing dog, look forward, and then bring your feet forward to come into a forward fold. Hands to shins, come up halfway, half forward fold. Exhale, fold, and then reverse swan dive. Arms come up overhead. And then hands come to heart center, and then release your hands to your side here. From here, we'll try some standing lateral bends. So come back to mountain pose here. And then from here, raise your right arm right along your right torso. Root through your feet, and then begin to, your left hand can just be right at your left waist. And then just laterally bend over to the left side. So your right hips shift to your right. I'm shadowing you, by the way, so I'm not doing what I'm saying. I'm doing the other side here. So come into a standing lateral bend just as far as you go until you feel like this is a good stopping point here. And then maybe use an inhale to bring yourself back up to the other side. So right hand comes down, left arm lifts up towards the ceiling, go long here. And then left hip shift over to the left as you kind of bend over to the right here. And then use an inhale to help you lift yourself back up. We'll do a few more cycles of them. Now you can do one arm at a time. If you like both arms, which are a little bit more challenging, you can clasp your hands and do both arms as you go over to the left. Bring yourself back up. And then go over to the right. And then back up again. You can sync your breath with this, so you can exhale as you move over to the left side. Inhale, bring yourself back to center. Exhale, over to the right, and then come back to center. And then release your hands, and then maybe shake it out here. We'll try a balancing pose, a one-legged balancing pose. Now, if you think your one-legged balance is maybe unstable and you think you might topple over, invite yourself next to a wall so that you can actually use the wall to kind of help give you a little bit of confidence to play around with just being on one leg here. Otherwise, if you want a little bit of extra challenge, then just try to stay where you're at here. So root through the left foot. Try to balance on the left leg. So left leg is toning. And then bring your right heel to hover. Arms can be at your side or they can be at your waist. Just see how this feels. If this is challenging, this is your dancer pose. So this is called stage number 1, dancer pose. And this might be your dancer pose today. I like this because if you feel a little bit wobbly, you can set that heel right down here. Stage number 2 is to bend that right knee and clasp the right knee with both hands. See how this is feeling. You might have to tone a little bit through your core, grow up tall through the crown of your head, find a good focal point in the distance to focus your gaze to help you balance. Stage number 3 is draw the knee behind you, reach behind with your right hand, find the right foot. Left hand can be at your waist here. Stage number 4 is take your left arm, raise it up towards the ceiling, so it's right next to your left ear. Stage number 5 is begin to hinge yourself slowly forward, maybe extend the right leg out behind you as far as you go until you find your edge here. And if this is too far, back yourself off 1 or 2 stages. At some point, release. And if this left leg felt like it got a workout, then go ahead and release it and shake it out. Now we'll try the right leg here. So root through the right foot, tone through the right leg, shift your weight onto that right leg. Tell that right leg you're going to balance on it now. And then bring the left heel to a hover. Stay here, or bend the left knee and clasp that left knee. Or bring the left knee back and find the left foot. Or bring the right arm up alongside the right ear. Or begin to hinge yourself forward any amount until you find
your version of dancer pose. Maybe you have to back off a few notches here until you find your version here. And it's okay to feel wobbly. Remember, balance is a verb, and we're exploring what it feels like to find that balance point, find that edge. And spring is a wonderful example of that. You can come out of dancer pose if you're not already out here. We'll try a little bit of a warrior standing poses, warrior flow next. So if you're using a mat, stand sideways on your mat. Take a wide stance, pretty wide. So as wide as you can accessibly go, where you're not in pain, but you still feel stable and rooted through the feet. And then go ahead and turn your left toes 90 degrees to face out here. And then bend your left knee and just kind of allow yourself to float forward till that left knee stops here. So we're coming into warrior two. So both feet are grounded, and then raise your arms up on either side. Extend out through your arms from the very center of your torso, your heart center. That energy moves out through your arms, through your fingertips here. Nice neutral spine. And then maybe look out over the front middle fingers, even though you know what your back middle fingers are doing here. So warrior two, maybe sink a little bit deeper if it feels okay. You still want to feel rooted and toned in the legs to keep you stable here. And you might have to change your stance. And then from here, we're moving into what's called peaceful warrior. So bring the right hand down to the right leg and lift the left arm up and laterally bend over the right leg here, sideways like this, as far as you go. Reach up and over. Maybe hold for a breath here. We're doing this slowly. This is a slow flow here. And then we're moving into triangle next, triangle pose. So bring yourself back up straight, arms extend out. Straighten that front leg. And then begin to hinge your torso over that front leg. You can bring this hand to a block, or you can bring that left hand to the left leg, right arm reaches up towards the ceiling, and you can look down at the ground for stability. You want to look sideways, that's fine. Make sure your head and your neck are comfortable here. If you want to challenge your balance, gaze up towards the ceiling for maybe one more breath. But you're thinking about the balance in the stability in your feet. And then on your next inhale, bring yourself all the way up. Arms can come down to rest, and then turn your feet forward. Maybe take a resting breath. And now all of that on the other side. So now the right foot turns out 90 degrees, faces away, and you're reestablishing the stability in your feet. And then the right knee bends. It drifts over the right toes till it finds its stopping point here. Extend your arms out. Long torso is toning and neutral here. And then look out over your right middle finger here for warrior two. One more breath and maybe sink a little bit more deeply into warrior two. Keep that front knee bent. And as we move into peaceful warrior. So now the left hand reaches down and finds the left leg. Reach up with the right palm and the right arm. Find your version of peaceful warrior here. Stay for a breath. And then slowly bring your torso back up. Arms extend out. Straighten the front leg and slowly move into triangle. So now hinge over that front right leg. Bring the front right hand down to the shin or to a block. Raise the left arm up towards the ceiling. Grow expansive through your shoulders here. And you can look down at the ground. You can look towards the side with your head and your neck up towards the ceiling. Make sure your head and your neck does not feel kinked. So unkink it if it's feeling kinked. And then next inhale, bring yourself all the way up. Bring your feet together, hands to heart center. So we'll do that whole sequence on both sides 2 more times, but quite a bit faster, almost normal vinyasa pace, although not quite vinyasa pace. We'll do 1 breath per pose, which will still be pretty fast here. So turn left toes out, sink yourself down into Warrior Two. Stay for a slow breath. And then hinge yourself back over that right leg into a lateral bend, Peaceful Warrior, for a nice slow breath here. And then bring your torso back up, slowly straighten that front leg, and lower yourself over into Triangle Pose for a breath. And then bring yourself back up. Hands come down to rest, turn your feet in, and then turn the other toes out, the right toes out. Sink yourself slowly, establish Warrior Two for a breath. And then front knee stays bent, come back into a back lateral bend, come into Peaceful Warrior here. And then bring yourself up, straighten that front leg, hinge yourself over into Triangle Pose. And then bring your torso back up, hands come down. So 1 more cycle of both of those sides. So feet together in this wide-legged stance, and then it's the left toes that turn out, and sink yourself slowly down into Warrior Two. Bring yourself up into a Peaceful Warrior. Slowly bring your torso up, extend that front leg, move yourself down into Triangle Pose. And then bring yourself all the way up. Maybe arms come down, you can shake them out. Feet go forward. 1 last side here. So the right foot turns up. Warrior Two for a breath. And then the palm faces up. Hinge backwards. Kind of bend backwards into Peaceful Warrior here. Reach back. And then bring your torso up. Legs extend. Come into Triangle as you hinge over that front leg here. And then inhale, bring yourself all the way up. Hands come down, feet come forward here. And then slowly inch your feet back together into Mountain Pose. Come to the front of your mat, and we'll do kind of a half Sun Salutation to make it back down onto the floor, because we're switching gears a little bit more yang here to move back into a more gentle, more passive yin cycle of postures here. So from Mountain Pose, sweep your arms up overhead, upward salute. Exhale and Swan dive forward into a forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, lengthen out through the torso. Exhale, fold, bend your knees, plant your hands, step back into a table pose. And then from table, we're moving into Warrior Four, which is my name for wide-legged child's pose. So knees go wide, they go about mat-width apart here. Feet are untucked, and then you slowly sink your hips back towards the heels until they stop. Lower your torso and extend your arms forward into child's pose, into Warrior Four, and allow your body to settle here, allow your thoughts to settle here. And once again, let your mind drift towards this idea of the equinox, this idea of spring, and then slowly bring yourself up to seated. And that's the end of the yang posture. We're moving back into a yin attitude. So now we're coming back to residing in supported postures for long periods of time. So from here, make your way onto your back. This next posture is called Cattail Pose, or cat pulling its tail pose. So legs are extended out long. Torso is relaxed here, initially here. And then raise, I guess I don't really need to shadow you here. I won't be shadowing at the moment. So Raise your right leg or left leg. Raise your left leg up towards the ceiling. Right leg's extended on the ground. Left leg's extended, and you're raising it up as far as it goes here. And then lower this left leg all the way over to the right until the left foot is on the ground. Inch yourself onto your right side. You can hold your head with your right forearm for the moment. This is the beginning of Cattail Pose. So if this is as far as you want to go, this is where you can stop. Next stage of cattail is bend the bottom right knee. Reach back with the left hand and see if you can find the left foot. This is kind of stage number 2. Stage number 3 is melt this left shoulder back towards the ground, the upper shoulder, as far as it goes. For some of you, it'll reach the ground. For some of us, it'll just float. For some of us, we might need to grab a pillow and stuff a pillow underneath it so it doesn't get too achy here. Head and neck kind of lean back here. So this is full cattail pose here. If you think about this is kind of a modified version of dancer pose on the floor. We'll actually stay here for about 3 minutes. So quite a bit longer than the residing time that we did in half butterfly here. So if this is too deep for you, maybe back off, maybe release the foot. You can even have this leg bent if that needs to be bent. Or maybe you need some more padding underneath your head and neck or shoulders here. So cattail pose. This is where we go back to allowing the ground to create the stability so that our muscles can actually soften now. We needed the muscles for the yang section of the class. Now we're letting the muscles rest and exercising the connective tissue systems in cattail pose. So check in with your breath, check in with your sensations. Remind yourself that spring is a natural phenomenon and you are a natural being, therefore you are a natural phenomenon. So all this talking about spring and equinoxes, remind yourself that you're part of this. No matter how urban an environment we may live in, we are still of nature. We're still from nature. We still cycle like nature. Now the equinox is a major turning point in the changing of the seasons on our planet Earth. And it's sometimes helpful to remind us what causes the seasons. What causes the equinoxes? What causes the solstices? What causes winter? What causes summer? And what causes them is that our Earth is a planet. It's a spherical planet that's spinning on its axis. It spins once a day. And it orbits a star. It orbits the star that we call our sun. And it takes 1 year to go around that orbit. But the Earth, as it rotates on its axis, that axis doesn't point straight up and down with respect to its orbital axis. It's tilted to the side, 23.5 degrees. And it's because of that tilt. That tilt stays constant. It points to the same stars out in the distance. But as it moves around the sun, its orientation with respect to the sun changes. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, the tilt of the northern axis, the North Pole, if you will, points away from the sun. And that because it points away, we don't get as much direct sunlight. And that less direct sunlight makes things cooler and darker. Just one more breath here on this side. And then release. Maybe bend the top knee. Bring the top knee on top of the bottom knee. Gently roll yourself onto your back. Notice if there's any reverberation, and by reverberation I mean a feeling of stiffness here, a feeling of winter maybe. And then you can You can actually maybe bend your knees and hug your knees into your chest. Maybe find some activity that works out some of the kinks. Maybe you can do waterfall pose here for a few breaths. But we are moving into the other side of cattail pose. So both legs are out long this time. And now the right leg lifts. Like I said before, I'm not shadowing at the moment because I don't think you really need to. This is kind of a complicated enough pose to get in. So left leg's on the floor straight, right leg's lifted, and then lower the right leg over to the left until it reaches the floor. Inch yourself onto the left torso. And then hand along you can rest your head here. And if this is enough for you, this shape, you can just stay here for the 3 minutes. Otherwise, bend the bottom knee. See if you can find that foot with your hand. And if you can't reach that foot and you really want to, you can always use a strap to find that foot. You can stay here, or you can release your head and your neck, roll the right shoulder back towards the floor, let everything settle, and wherever it naturally stops, that's probably your natural edge. That's your natural balance point here. And then we'll stay here for a few more minutes. When the North Pole points towards the sun in the Northern Hemisphere, we experience summer. And of course, in the Southern Hemisphere, you experience the opposite seasons, because when the North Pole's pointed towards the sun, tilted towards the sun, the South Pole is tilted away from it. That's why you get winter in Australia and in South America and in southern Africa. And we have summer. But the equinoxes are the transition periods. That's when the pole is neither pointed towards or away, and that's happening everywhere on the earth except in the Northern Hemisphere. We might be the spring equinox, so we're moving from winter into summer. In the Southern Hemisphere, we're moving from the summer into winter if it's the autumn equinox here. And for the spring equinox, the special thing about spring as we move from winter into summer is life wakes up. So life has been kind of quietly waiting all winter long, and it begins to arise and burst forth in the spring. This is what we all understand about spring, is just how life just basically erupts all around us. And we notice that. We notice everything turning green here. So about another minute on this side. Maybe you need to go a little bit deeper in this pose. Maybe you need to release something. Maybe you need to come out. Maybe 2 minutes was enough here. So get in touch with your own inner nature. Just like we get in touch with nature in spring because flowers are blooming. There's small animals you see, and there's more bird activities you can hear. The plants and animals are all getting really excited. And we do too sometimes. We do too when it turns to spring. We realize that the long darkness of winter is over. And we get to look forward to more warmth and more light. And we're appreciating that fact on this balance point of equal day and equal night, of equal warmth and equal coolness. Maybe just one more breath here. And then gently, slowly come out of cattail. You can bend the top knee, you can roll yourself back onto your back here. You can do little exercises to work out the achiness that might have developed here. But when you're ready, roll over onto one side, bring yourself up to seated, and we'll get set up for the next yin posture, which is shoelace pose. So for shoelace, you'll come to seated, legs out in front. And if you need to sit up on a little padding, then invite yourself to sit up on a little padding here. I think I'll go back to shadowing and mirroring you. So again, I'll be doing the opposite of what I'm saying just to kind of demonstrate. I don't normally do this in the videos, but maybe for this one, since it has some yang in it, we'll go ahead and do this. So bend your right knee and then take that right leg and stack it on top of your left leg here. This is the beginnings of shoelace pose. This is called half shoelace. Bend the bottom knee and bring the bottom left knee around, left foot around. So right leg's on top, left leg's on bottom. This is the time to notice. Notice if your knees are liking this position. If they're not, there'll be an alternative. If they're just a little bit achy, remember you can always stuff padding under whatever knee is feeling the achiness here, like a pillow. If this is not working for you, and by not working, I mean there's some serious pain in a joint somewhere. This is meant to get to the outside of the hips, but if there's some pain in the knees or somewhere, try a different version. This is called eye of the needle. So something to do instead is to make your way onto your back. Bend both knees, feet on the floor. Bring the left leg in, put the left heel on the right thigh. Left knee goes out wide. This can stay here. If you're not feeling much, then bring the right leg in towards your torso till you're feeling something. So you can use your hands, clasp them behind the thigh, and just bring the right thigh in till you're finding an appropriate stopping point here. So that's a good alternative to shoelace. Otherwise, come back to shoelace. And then we'll stay here for a couple more minutes or so. So, ancient peoples, before we had smartphones and wall calendars and other technological devices keeping track of time for us, we found it very useful to keep track of the seasons and of the years, particularly if you were trying to grow crops and grow food to survive. Knowing what season it was, in other words, knowing what part of the year it was, very, very important. And because of that, the sky, the equinoxes and the solstices were the calendar keepers for ancient peoples, and that was so important to them that it created grand rituals around these seasons so that they could remind themselves and remember. Say for the spring equinox, this is a good time to think about planning. It's like, okay, winter's over, life is coming back. This is time to plant crops and have a good chance the crops will grow and make it through the summertime. The solstice reminds us that we're getting close to harvest. And those time points were very, very important. So what you'll find is if you study history or archaeology, you'll notice that a lot of the equinoxes and solstice markers of the sun, parent sun, traveling through the sky is evidence throughout all these old archaeological sites, because they were basically telling people the time. We have one more minute on this side of shoelace. If you haven't folded forward and you would like to, see what happens when you fold forward slightly, and that might increase the traction, the pressure somewhere. Notice where it's increasing it. And maybe soften and allow your torso to relax here. So Stonehenge, probably the most famous example of one of these ancient calendars here. Although people use it as a kind of a celebration and ritual site for other things, but it certainly marked the seasons. It marked the apparent risings and settings of the sun as it appeared to change as the earth orbited around the sun. And it marked the solstice periods, it marked the equinoxes. And in fact, you find a lot of very famous sites aligned to the equinoxes, to this day of equal day and equal night. If you fold it forward, bring yourself back up. We'll add a twist to this right here at the end. So before you come out of the shoelace legs, go ahead and twist your torso away from the top thigh. So in this case, since I'm mirroring you, go ahead and turn to the left. And so you're turning through your upper torso. That hand comes back toward behind you. Maybe the upper right hand grabs the left knee here. Upper right hand finds the right leg here. And just do a gentle twist here. Head can stay neutral, or you can turn your head over that back shoulder. A breath here. And then go ahead and release, and now you can release the shoelace. So reach back with your hands, and then slowly untangle your shoelace. Oh, and I always like to do windshield wipers myself as a counter pose. So I bend my knees, put my feet wide apart, and then I slowly bob my legs, my knees up and back and down from side to side. Thus the windshield wiper movement here. Windshield wiper is not really an ancient term, is it? We do get some rain in the spring, so we might have to use our windshield wipers here. And then we'll move into the other side of this shoelace pose. So this time, since I'm shadowing, bend the left knee and stack the left knee on top of the right leg. Bend the right knee and sweep that right heel on the outside of the left hip. So we're trying to knee stack one on top of the other, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect for most of us here. Again, this is meant for the hips. So if your knees or your ankles are in pain, then either pad them, brace them, or I have the needle on the other side here. You can just stay sitting here for a couple of minutes. If you liked folding forward, you can fold forward any amount. And by the way, you can stuff padding pillows underneath your torso for stability. And then we'll stay there for about another 3 minutes or so. So I don't know when you're going to be watching this video. Hopefully, since it's going to have Spring Equinox in the title, you might think about watching it during your Spring Equinox. If you live somewhere, say in Chile, then you're going to have to wait a few months after this video gets posted in order to watch it during your Spring Equinox. So a good exercise to do when you're not practicing yoga, like we are here, or maybe you're practicing outside, and it is spring. It is near the equinox sequence. And notice the balance. Notice how this growing light, this equal light compared to equal dark, helps remind nature to start moving again, to start growing, to start springing forth here. You can see the new plant growth. You can see it in the trees as they get their leaves back. You can see it in the animals. Where I live, there's a lot of birds, and the birds get very, very excited around springtime. But you can also just see it in the sun getting higher, and the days getting longer, the nights getting shorter. And inherently, you can feel this yourself, because you're part of this balance, this equinox, because you yourself have a very natural being, and that's what ties this thing with yoga. So you're trying to pay attention to the seasons, by watching the spring equinox. You're trying to pay attention to your natural cycles by watching how you respond to these different shapes that we make, these different attitudes that we take on. Maybe watch now. Watch is a metaphor. Watch is for feel. Feel how you're feeling in your posture. Is there a balance point in there? Have you reached a place of an equinox? In yoga we say edge, but maybe a more appropriate word is equinox. Find your equinox in each posture and then reside there. So reside there for maybe 3 or 4 more breaths. And then when you're ready, slowly bring yourself up if you folded forward. Hands on the floor behind you. You can lower your torso back enough so that you can release your legs. And then whatever kind of movements that you would like to do to work out the stagnation that was building in the hips and in the legs as you were residing in that posture here. That was the last long yin posture. Now a little bit of integration before we move into a resting pose. So I'd like to try a little bit of a hand-heart flow here near the end of practice to find a comfortable, accessible seat. It can be hero's pose again, or it can be a cross-legged seat, or it can even be going back to seated in a chair here. And then once you get settled, find your roots, your contact points so that you feel stable. Grow your spine long and neutral here. And then bring your hands to heart center. So this is a heart flow. I call this Kathy's heart flow because of the person who taught me this here. So hands at heart center. And then exhale. And then when you inhale and make a big sweeping circle with your prayer hands. So they go out in front and then they sweep up and they come back in a circle until they touch in between your eyes. So your third eye here. Exhale and reach them up and forward, kind of pointing your fingers towards the sky, towards the universe. And then inhale, make a circle with your index fingers and your thumbs from each hand touching each other. So a big circle, and as you inhale, bring that big circle, the symbol of unity, of connectedness. Bring it back in and touch your heart center, so somewhere around your upper torso here. As you exhale slowly and push that circle out into the universe. So you're acknowledging your connection, your cycle and your balance point with the rest of the universe. And then separate your hands, turn your hands to face up, touch the thumb and index finger of each hand. I call this Prana Mudra. And then inhale and draw that universe energy back in towards your torso. And then exhale, bring your hands to heart center. So we'll do that 3 more times, a little bit faster. So inhale, arms sweep out and back to touch the third eye. Exhale, extend your hands towards the sky. Inhale, sweep the circle mudra back towards your heart center. Exhale, and expand your heart center out into the universe. Inhale, draw some of that energy back. Exhale, hands at heart center. Inhale, hands sweep to third eye. Exhale, hands acknowledge the connection with the universe. Inhale, create that unity, that connection. Exhale, expand it back out. Inhale, draw the energy back in. Exhale, let it rest at heart center. 1 more cycle. Inhale, sweeping circle to the third eye. Exhale, acknowledge the universe. Inhale, unity at heart center. Exhale, expand that awareness out into the world. Inhale, call that energy back. Exhale, hands to heart center. And then from here, we'll move into our final resting pose of practice. This is known as Shavasana, is the Sanskrit name. And you can practice any type of restorative posture or position that brings you a sense of stability, of safety, and of relaxation. So a standard traditional pose for Shavasana is just lying on your back, arms and legs comfortably extended, far enough away from each other so that muscles can just relax, palms face up towards the ceiling. I'm going to recommend reclined butterfly pose. So for reclined butterfly pose, you'll bend your knees, bring your feet together, and then lower the knees out to either side. So bottoms of your feet are touching, and your heels can either be close or far away from your hips. The distance doesn't really matter here, so find something. You're wanting to be comfortable so that you can soften and relax. Now, if this doesn't fit your body, find a different posture, or go back into just normal Shavasana. You can actually just sit in a quiet meditative seat too, if you wish here. Find any props or supports that you want for this final posture. And then begin to relax. Begin to soften and settle. Give yourself permission to spend some time in this posture. Let it be okay. So your agenda, your goal for Shavasana is to just allow yourself to be here with nothing to do and nowhere to go. That's your goal. Your goal is to have nothing to do. Your goal is to have nowhere to go and to just simply notice your own being. Notice how it softens. Notice if there's any tension in your body that is maybe not wanting to give in. See if you can release that tension, or see if you can accept that tension. Maybe the tension won't release. And then release your brain. Soften your eyes, your jaw, your whole face. So skin of your face is softening. The muscles around your eye sockets releasing. Your jaw and your tongue, your teeth, your gums, the whole inside of your mouth is softening. Skin around your ears is soft. Temples, forehead, the crown of your head is soft. Release the attachment to your thoughts. So your thoughts will still drift through your mind. But you can allow them to drift. So you can just accept them and leave them alone. Let them drift randomly. They'll just drift in. And maybe with a little bit of practice, you can let them drift out. Shoulders are soft. You can feel the contact points between the back of your torso, the back of your sacrum touching the ground, the back of your shoulder blades touching the ground. Each arms are soft, so the right arm, right palm, right finger is soft. Left arm, left palm, left finger is soft. See if you can feel the energy in the tips of your fingers. It's subtle. The tiny kind of tingling sensation in the tip of each of your fingers, both on the left hand and on the right hand. Hips are soft, thighs are relaxed, knees are soft, shins and ankles releasing, heels, soles, and tops of your feet, all of your toes, and the tips of each toe on each foot. See if you can notice that. See if you can notice springtime the equinox, the emergence of life in your own body. Your own body is full of life. Whether you realize it or not, trillions of cells of life in your body. In a balance between lightness and heaviness, warmth and coolness. Darkness and light. At some point, begin to deepen your breath. Maybe start to make subtle movements, starting with the tips of your fingers and the tips of your toes. Wiggling your fingers and toes, maybe expanding that into hands, into feet. Maybe making little motions with arms, with legs. Even start to make subtle movements with your head here. If you're in Reclined Butterfly Pose, you can go ahead and maybe take your hands and put your hands underneath your thighs and slowly bring your knees back up towards each other here. If you're in Shavasana, just bend your knees, and with your knees bent, allow yourself to just slowly flow over onto one side. And then when you get there, take a moment to settle there, a couple of breaths here. And cultivate some gratitude for the equinox, the balance in the earth, the balance in your life. But also cultivate some deep gratitude for you, your unique manifestation in the universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. Then when you feel ready, bring yourself up to a comfortable seat. Once you're there, bring your hands to heart center. The spine is nice and neutral here. So I'll end this practice with an Om. You can either join in or you can just simply listen. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.